Hello, my name's Harry Towell and I'm the founder of the Whitelabrecs record label. In this video I thought I'd share how I got into ambient music, how I then became involved in the scene, and then I thought I'd talk through a few key moments in Whitelabrecs history as well. So just to give you some background on how I got into ambient music there, I thought I'd share 6 important records from around the time when I discovered the genre. So my first discovery was Ambient 2, The Plateau Mirror, by Brian Eno and Harold Budd. Brian Eno was my starting point for ambient music, which is the case for many people, but this record of his really stood out, and I think why I enjoyed it was because it was a really strong album from start to finish. Next, continuing on the Brian Eno theme, it would be Evening Star alongside Robert Fripp, and this for me shows how iconic cover artwork can be. For many people, this image is instantly recognisable. In fact, it's the cover image for the Reddit group for ambient music. Then probably my favourite ambient record from between 1980 and the 2000s would be another Brian Eno and Harold Budd collaboration. This is their album called The Pearl. This is just a really, really good record, and it reminds me of a time when I do a lot of walking with my iPod Classic and listen to the records I bought. And the track Late October would sometimes come on the shuffle, and it really was amazing. So yeah, this definitely is probably my favourite ever ambient record. In 2007 I started to look at the more recent records that were coming out at the time, and this is And Their Refinement and of the Decline by Stars of the Lid. For many, Stars of the Lid are one of the greatest ambient artists of all time, and I don't disagree with that at all. This is a triple gatefold record and really is one of my favourite records in my collection. Wouldn't be without it. A little while longer after discovering Stars of the Lid, I started to get into what I would call the more modern ambient scene, and what I really enjoyed was the embracement of, if that's a word, electro-acoustic music, where acoustic instruments such as strings, violins, guitars, etc. were used in the production of ambient music. And Richard Skelton was a really fine example of that. His whole records were sounding live, particularly on Marking Time, so it felt like loads of different strings musicians were playing live all at once, and it had a real natural feel to it. This record just blew my mind, and it still does to this day. Every track is absolutely fantastic. Strongly recommend it. It also set me on the path of being into a more modern classical sound as well, which leads me to the final of these 6 records, and that would be Dustin O'Halloran's Lumiere. Bit of an all-star lineup. Johan Johansson was on mixing duty for that one. Peter Broderick was involved, Clarence Jensen, and it's a really, really rich modern classical album, and for me that it's the best ever in the genre. Many people might disagree, it's a debate, but that's what music's all about. But if you've never heard of it before, check it out. And I'd definitely say the modern classical element to the Whitelabrecs style is definitely influenced by this record in particular. So the next question is how did I come to get involved in the ambient music scene? And I'd say that I've always been into making music or trying to make my own music, and I guess I'd struggled with this for many years, and it was just purely for my own pleasure. After I discovered ambient music, I got into the net label scene, and I noticed a lot of ambient artists were making field recordings, and by pure coincidence a colleague gave me a dictaphone recorder, which I then was able to take and record the sounds of the outdoors and make my own field recordings. I bought my first digital field recorder, which is an Olympus one, which I still have, which I don't use anymore. Now moved on to the Zoom H5. And yeah, once I started making my own field recordings, I was able to then pitch shift samples and make them into drones and make my own ambient music. And I was very lucky to get signed to some net labels myself in the early days, a label called Webbed Hand Records, another label called Earth Mantra. And those were my early starts in making my own ambient music. After a while I plucked up the courage to start approaching records for releasing physical music, because I'd always wanted some of my own music to be released on CD. That for me was a bit of a goal back then. And the first label to say yes was Under the Spire Recordings, who are based in Wales, and they released what I consider to be my debut as Ceruleus. It's called Frozen Quarters. At a similar time, I got talking to Hibernate Records, and eventually we released Voyage. It took well over a year to make that album, because the label had quite a bit of input on helping me develop the record, and I was really proud of it once that came out. It's my first Digipack edition. And then there was also another great label a little bit later on, called Home Normal, who are still going today. And this is my collaboration with Ekeliana as in an album called Mapping the Boundary Layer. And so again, another proud achievement. But I guess what we had was a community of 3 really strong British labels. Me being based here in the UK, that was quite encouraging as an early artist, and it sort of set me on the right path for starting my own label. What was particularly great about these labels was the kindness and the enthusiasm that these guys all showed with their labels, and it sort of made me think, well, actually, no, maybe I can do this as well. So I came up with my own idea for a net label rather than a physical record label, just to test things out. And that was Audio Gourmet. It was a net label that ran from 2010 and 2018. In the early days, I had a lot of support from Jonathan at Hibernate Records. He helped develop the website, and just helped give me some advice, some cover artwork from time to time. And it really helped support the label to develop over the years. He even worked with me to produce a collaborative CD. So he manufactured and sold these. I got a few copies and I sort of took care of the digital side of things. But we had a really strong lineup of artists. Just looking at some of the names that were involved back then, we had Off the Sky, we had Pillow Diver, Damien Valles, Nicola Ratti, Machine Fabrique, The Green Kingdom. So some really top names from around that time, and a lot of those guys are still going these days. So yeah, that was my first experience at releasing music on the CD. And yeah, Audio Gourmet ran for a couple of years side by side with Whitelabrecs. In the mid-2000s, I was a DJ, and I would buy vinyl from local record shops. Some of the records I bought would be these white label bootleg versions. I loved the limited edition handmade feel to these. And so this is where I got the name for Whitelabrecs, which is short for White Label Records. About 10 years later, I discovered the Vinyl Effects CDR, and I'd make mixtapes for myself and for friends. And sometimes I'd rubber stamp a picture or some words in the white label in the middle. And in late 2015, I decided to start Whitelabrecs, recreating the bootleg record. In 2016, I launched Whitelabrecs and started making mini bootleg records like these. The rubber stamped white label was housed inside a card sleeve, and then that included a Polaroid image of the cover artwork too. In 2019, I started printing a gatefold sleeve version of the Vinyl Effects CDs. These were increased runs of 100 copies, and this gave a chance to do more with the artwork across the 4 panels of the CD sleeve. 2020, the pandemic hit, of course, and I had to stop making CDs, so I launched a 30 album or EP series called Home Diaries. The following year, I launched this box set version with a double album and contained a booklet. The booklet had a picture from each artist inside their home, and it was all housed inside a foil printed box. And this included the rebranded Whitelabrecs logo, which I had designed by Thomas Easton in 2020. In 2023, I launched a new record wallet format, and this kind of ties together the original wallet sleeves that started the label with the printed editions. These are cheaper to manufacture, and so a bit cheaper for the customers too, and they also include custom printed marble effect discs. In 2024, I decided to do lots of new things, such as launch a new website, a new email list. I also started working with my artists to create blog posts, and I also launched a compilation called Texture Structures, which is a free gift for all people who join the label's email community. If you'd like to join our community, simply visit any Whitelabrecs page and fill in the form at the bottom. You'll then automatically get textures, structures sent to you via email, and then you'll be kept up to date with all the news and behind the scenes stuff and the occasional discount too. Thanks so much for watching the video, and I hope you found it interesting.